Hello, Jamie here from Inky and Scrappy, sharing with you today the project that I made with Lawn Fawn's new spring release 2022 using the Platforn pop-up box, card box. Either way. So I die cut everything out before I started because nobody wants to listen to the die cut machine go "Rrr." But here it is in all its glory. So I am using pieces from the pivot pop or the Platforn pop-up box and the pop-up box add-on. The grass pieces, the longer one here is a partial die cut method where I cut part of it and didn't let the end cut, and then I repositioned it to get a longer piece to fit that middle of the platform better. I wanted it to go edge to edge, and so I'm just inking those up to add some depth and dimension. And now I'm going in with some black soot ink on the mountains to do the same thing. And then I will bring in the hills, the little hills and the hillside there. So I'm going to add the white snow caps. The papers that I'm using. So my solid colored papers are, for the most part, all close to my heart. I don't know if any of them are even available anymore. I haven't been with them for many years. But when I was, that's where I have like I wouldn't say a lifetime supply, but a fairly good supply of solid colored cardstock. And so I'm using that up before I buy any others. So my colors were Clover Meadow, which is the Kelly Green color, or as close to Kelly Green as they had. Ponderosa Pine, which is a deep green color. And then the gray was, I'm not sure because it was from my scrap bin. So it's either Whisper Gray or, I don't think it's Whisper Gray. I think it's one of the darker ones. And then the red is Barn Red, of course. And the white is probably Nina Solar White cardstock. So I'm just adding those in, and I should have come in when I dropped that top piece on the barn. I should have come in with like a moist cloth and wiped the adhesive off. It wouldn't have stained like it did, and I ended up coloring the barn in, which was fine because it made it look, it gave it depth and dimension, but it, it added. So I'm trying to fiddle around with the little windows, and on my last video, I talked about how my things were taking me longer because my thumb wasn't cooperating. As you saw, I just entered video there. It was broken. So, yay me, I, waited 3 days to go in to see somebody to x-ray it, and then I had to wait another 2 days to actually see an orthopedist. It's broken. Hopefully it's in proper position, and we will find out on Tuesday and see if it stayed where it's supposed to or if they have to go in and surgically make it right. We'll find out. It still hurts. So I'm just kind of assembling the pieces that I can assemble here. I didn't put it all together. I don't know why I didn't. I think because I was excited to work on the box. Because, let's be honest, that was like, the whole purpose of the card I made was to play with the new pivot the Platforn pop-up box / card. So the cloud piece there was actually from the Platforn pop-up add-on, and that was so I cut the add-on piece first, and then I took my cloud border and cut it out on the top as far as I could to the top to make it work. I'm just trying to figure out where I need to make the cuts, so I'm lining them up, cutting to make them straight to hopefully be within reason when I'm doing the box. So I did figure out that my measurement on that first score line on the clouds was at 1.5 inch. And so once you have the right length, if you go in 1.5 inches on each end, you know, tip it and flip it, because the other side isn't on like a score line, at least not on my scoreboard, because it's kind of in between the two lines. And so I kind of had to cheat it over a little bit to get it to go. And this is where I was like, hello, that one's like on 1.5 inches. So if you have it the right measurement, you should be able to just flip it over and do it that way. And so that's what I did. I went back and I rescored all of those because I wanted those creases to be pretty good, knowing that I'm making it a lot thicker in the back than was intended, which is fine. It works beautifully. So now I'm just going back in with, I took those Platforn pop-up pieces and I'm folding them on all the lines. And then because I want when the die cut makes the cut, you have the sharper edge and the beveled edge, and I want the beveled edge to be forward. So I end up folding them all backwards again because it was easier for me to fold them the one way and then go back and fold them the other way. And so I'm just making sure everything is creased and folded so we can start assembling the platform portion of it. And I'm going to take some adhesive after I get these tees. And the one I just did a partial, like had a scrap that worked because I knew I didn't need below that crease line in the third one. So I just used up some paper. So now I'm going in with a 1/4 inch score tape and I'm just putting that on all the parts that are going to need the adhesive. So 2 of the T's on the bottom, and then I'm making sure that it's not hanging off the edge because I don't want it to stick to anything that it's not supposed to stick to. And this is my first try at putting the platform together. So if I can do it 1-thumbed and 4-fingered, I'm pretty sure most people are going to be able to do this one. It's easy once you get the hang of it. So my biggest part was trying to remember which way the T was supposed to go once it had adhesive on it for the other one. So I did have to get Kelly's video loaded to that spot, and then I ended up pulling it out and flipping it over because I knew I wanted the adhesive towards me at some point, but I couldn't remember if it was that way or that way. So putting the adhesive away from you, and then when you fold it back up, or you fold it towards you, then you want to remove the adhesive piece. And so just making sure that's snug in there, and then putting it in, and then removing that adhesive on the next piece, and making the jump. And I folded it and then just kind of held it up back there. You'll see it pop out here because I didn't really have it. You know, I was trying to make sure that it was straight before I pressed down. And so it worked beautifully. And that was my first try. So I was impressed. And yes, it took me 2 to figure out that the adhesive goes away from you. It's all good. And this one will go together just like the same. I'll just make sure that I have it pressed up there good. And then the next big jump. Folding it, kind of folding it in half really, essentially. And then just popping that piece behind, making sure it's put together there. And then this T, just making sure that that whole T is above, you know, the bottom of that T is just above that score line is probably the easiest way to say to line it up. And then I just kind of eyeballed to make sure that it was at about the same position as the top piece there on the other part. And then I just took an inch wide piece of score tape instead of using the two little pieces to put those together. And now I'm going to line up those box pieces. And I did speed this up a little bit because with one thumb, it takes me a little bit longer than it probably normally would have. And so it worked. Woohoo! I was excited that it worked on the first try. Not that I didn't think it would, but you know. So now I'm going and figuring out my height. And I didn't actually measure how tall it was going to be because I wasn't too worried about envelope. I have, half full pieces of envelope if I needed, but I was figuring this is going to fit in a 5x7, and it does fit in a 5x7 just fine. I think if you use just the pop-up add-on, it will fit in an A2 size envelope. So if you don't go above that, but you can constantly measure. I have an A2 guide, like a piece of paper that I have cut for measuring those types of things, and for a 5x7 for all of my normal sized cards, 5x7, slimline, mini slim, all of those. I just didn't take it out because I was excited to play. So I'm just going in and adding some adhesive to those strips, cutting down that longer piece, and then I have to measure to figure out how long to cut it, because you can't have anything inside the box that is longer than the box when it's full, when it's popped up. So I did cut it, and then I didn't cut it down enough, and so I'm going to end up going back and just snipping off. I think I was cutting it down lengthwise or widthwise the first time. So this time and I put it in there, and it was still just a little bit off. So I just took my scissors and trimmed that off. And so as long as it's not hanging over the widest part in that middle flap, it will work. And so I'm just getting my grass in first before I built up my clouds, because with one hand I don't have the mobility to reach in like I did before. So here you see me taking the tweezers and trying to pinch it because I can't hold on to the box and do all the things at the same time. And so here I'm trimming off the ends a little bit because I'm going in front of that piece. It's going to need to be a little bit shorter than the piece behind it. And so I'm just sneaking that in there with some glue so I have a little bit of wiggle room. And I did cut the one side a little bit too short, so I just go in with the scissors and trim it up. And you can't tell that it's, shorter than the other. It's fine. And so then the clouds, I'm just going back behind and figuring out where I want them to sit. I knew it wasn't going to go all the way down to the bottom. That doesn't bug me at all. If it bugs you, you could make your cloud piece bigger. And so I'm just trimming off the excess there, so everything lines up. And then I'm gonna, this is where I realized that adhesive it left marks on the paper, and I use the glitter glue one. What is it called? Art glitter. I think it's the art glitter glue. And usually it doesn't show up, but this one it just did. And so I go in with a marker, and it hides it pretty good. And it gives that barn that, a little bit more shadowing, rustic look underneath, which I kind of like. And so I'm going to finish putting my barn together here. And I'm thinking maybe I should have gone in with the door first. I don't know. And I'm still fiddling with the things, then I don't use them. Maybe if I end up getting that before the card goes out. There might be a little farmer that hangs his little head out because, you know, I putzed for so long on it. I'm just adding the windows in here. And then I didn't like how flimsy that little top is because it is such a little small weather vane. You know, it's skinny, it's small. So I went in with another piece of weather vane that I had cut out and then just added it to the back for stability there. And then I'm just going to glue this in. I kind of put glue on the top because I didn't want to go above with my glue. I wanted to make sure that the glue wasn't actually going to touch anything when I close this up. And there I am with the tweezers trying to pinch that together again. Not thinking I could just fold it up and squish it that way. But now I'm going to ink up my stamps and do some coloring. So I did multiple sheets and then I moved stuff around. I like to get everything on there that I can get on there. And so I'm going in with some colors. I will show you the colors towards the end here. I'm not going to do all of this on camera because it took me quite a good amount of time to do all the coloring. And I don't use all the images on this one. I actually don't show you the coloring on the images that I did use for the goats, but I will show you 2 goats. And my marker was dry. So I ended up switching it out for an ohuhu. I think it was 93 matched, fairly close to the E37, the sepia on the copic. And I did end up going over, I think, all of my goats with 2 layers of ink just to make that blend a little bit more seamless. Sometimes I can get away with a 1 time, but with the browns and the grays, for some odd reason, and they're a bigger image. I think that makes a difference too. When it's a smaller image, usually I can get by with just 1 layer of ink. But I do like how they all turned out. So there are my goats. Those are all the markers that I used to color all the images. And there are all of the images. And I'm going to take the coordinating dies and run to the die cutter and cut them all out. And so now I'm just like a kid playing with paper dolls, or paper goats in this case, trying to figure out what I want, how I want it to look. And then I totally changed my mind. It's how I roll. So I decided that the little jumping goat would be adorable, jumping up in the air. So I found a piece of acetate in my scraps and then put that on. And it's a wider piece of acetate. I wanted it to be pretty stable. So it's probably, I don't know, almost 1 inch wide. And then I'm just doing the sentiment here. You are the goat. And I did it on top of a piece of acrylic first to make sure, or acetate, not acrylic, a piece of acetate first to make sure that it was in the little square that I wanted it to be. So then I'm going to pop that on there. And then I wanted to do this and I forgot. So then I came back after it was already on and I took the throwaway piece from my other piece and then I just stenciled on a little bit of grass there on the bottom. And then I'm just going to add a few more embellishments to the bottom there. And it is done. And then I found that the one card, I'd have to look and see which set it is, works great for the back. So I found my die cut that worked the best, and I will put a sentiment on there for the recipient. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Have a good day.